All right, so going into the 2021 season, the LSU Tigers are going to have a crap ton of expectations, especially, coming off a very disappointing year. They went 5-5. However, the last couple of games, you can make an argument, was a turning point, most notably the Marco Wilson shoe toss, right? If LSU has a very successful season this year, you can literally go back and, or look back to Marco Wilson throwing the shoe, which cost Florida that game. And you can make an argument that that was the turning point of LSU's program, right? They were headed towards a 3-7 program and losing a bunch of players to the NFL to now returning over 20 players to get young, innovative coaches in your coaching staff that the players like and respect. And now you have a bunch of momentum going over. Not to mention that, again, you won your last two games because of that Marco Wilson shoe toss. So now going into the 2021 season, you have huge expectations. Now, is it a national championship or playoff contender? I wouldn't say national championship contender, more of a playoff contender that I think LSU fans want. Again, LSU fans, you guys can let me know what's kind of your expectations. But from what I've heard, right, it's 10-2, 11-1. Who knows? I've heard some fans say that, hey, maybe we could go and, go undefeated. We kind of did it before. I think LSU fans are right to be excited, though. I mean, look at the last time that they returned all these starters. It was back in 2019 where they won the national championship. Look all the way back from 2011 and 2012 where they brought in a lot of returning talent for those years, right? They went on to have successful seasons, right? 2011, they almost won the national championship. 2012 was I think a 2 or 3 loss regular season, but still, they were one of the top 10 teams in the country that year with a bunch of offensive production. So going into this year, obviously with all those returning starters, again, looking back at the track record, LSU is known for producing a bunch of talent, sending them off to the NFL. But, again, a lot of those players, they're from the state of Louisiana. So, again, just keeping those players there, I think is really, really huge. The fact that LSU got guys like Durante Jones and Mangas and Pets, I think these are very young, innovative coaches. These are guys that are nonsensical guys. They're up to speed. Bo Pelini was kind of the same thing, but here's the thing about Bo Pelini. He just didn't really grab that much respect from the locker room. Not to mention that he was an outdated. Bo Pelini is a good defensive coordinator if you're talking about 10, 15 years ago, but he was very, very outdated, right? Esminger retired, pretty much showing that Joe Brady was the catalyst, was the biggest reason why the offense was so special and how his plays as a passing coordinator really helped LSU develop into a national champion. So obviously, again, getting guys like Mangus, Pets, and Durante Jones there, these young, innovative Joe Brady type like coaches there, I feel like is going to do very, very good for the LSU Tigers. So just talking about some of the players that are returned real quick. Looking at, their quarterback situation, they might just have the best quarterback room in the country, right? Look at TJ Finley, Max Johnson, and Miles Brennan. Now, again, are those Heisman-worthy All-American type players? No, but those three guys have experience. Even the Alabama Crimson Tide, which is, again, favored to win the SEC and favored it to potentially win another national championship, they got a lot of talent with, Bryce Young and Paul Tyson, but they lack the experience. All three of those guys played a significant amount of snaps, right? TJ Finley's known as that 6'6", 250-pound just a strong arm, big quarterback. Max Johnson is a very, he's your typical, pro style quarterback. But again, he has a good arm and he has a pretty good understanding and knowledge of any offense that he can come to mind. He can adapt. Miles Brennan's a guy that's, again, he's a hard worker, tons of talent, but a guy that already is a leader, and he has the demand and the respect from the locker room. So they already have the deepest quarterback room, I think, in the country. The running back situation, they have one of the best running back rooms in the country with, of course, you look at guys like, Tyron Davis, and then you look at John Emery. You return both those running backs back, and then not to mention that you get guys like Armani Goodwin, who is one of the best running backs in the state of Alabama. I think he was the number one running back in the state of Alabama. So that is really, really huge for the LSU Tigers to kind of, get more depth in those particular areas. The offensive line is the biggest thing that they return back because I think they return all 5 starters of your offensive line. I forgot the one guy's name. He's a projected first-round pick. You guys can let me know who he is, but he's returning back. That was really, really huge instead of declaring for the NFL draft. LSU's offensive line, was it kind of like this, the offensive line from 2018, where even though they were good, they weren't on that level of Alabama or any of those schools. They're not on that particular LSU, type of level, but it was still a very experienced offensive line that did get better in the last 2 games of the regular season. So, anyway, just getting all that experience back, it automatically I think that will make your offensive line better. Getting all 5 starters back is very, very crucial. Look at the receiving position. Very, very underrated, extremely talented as far as the talent pool that's there. Kayshon Boutte emerged over the last 3 games of the regular season. Again, you look at the Alabama game, the Florida game, the Ole Miss game. He emerged as that dude, right? Terrence Marshall, he opted out for the NFL. Eric Gilbert, he's now in the transfer portal. So you really needed somebody to step up. He was that guy that immediately stepped up. You look at other guys like, Coy Moore, who stepped up, and there are some other notable receivers too on that roster that are pretty talented. Not to mention that if you look at the 2021 recruiting class, which was the 3rd best recruiting class in the country, they have, I think, around 4 or 5 receivers that are all 4-star players, including notable players like Brian Thomas, like Brian Thomas Jr., who's one of the best receivers in the state of Louisiana, who could be a early round starter. So they got a lot of, so they got a mixture of experience, but they also have that talent, and not to mention that a majority of those guys are from the state of Louisiana. And again, they played with all 3 of those quarterbacks that I just named. So the chemistry should be should definitely be way more established than some of the college teams, some of the elite college teams even. I think that LSU can definitely have that advantage. Defensively, this was where it was the Achilles heel of the team. And again, Bo Pelini's scheme was simply outdated. The players just didn't feel comfortable, and a bunch of things just a bunch of things happened that obviously caused Bo Pelini to be fired. But most importantly, he lost respect in the locker room. Again, now that you got Durante Jones, LSU's defense, with all those starters coming back, especially in the secondary, LSU is going to have the best secondary in the nation. With Eli Ricks, who was I don't know how in the hell he wasn't an All-American. He was robbed from being an All-American. But Eli Ricks, Derek Stingley Jr., who really wasn't that much. He really wasn't healthy. And then of course, all those things happened. But with Derek Stingley Jr. and Eli Ricks, you now have the best cornerback tandem in the country. Not to mention that you got the slot positions with Jay Ward there. You get with Jay Ward and some other notable players in the slot. Cordell Flott as well. You look at the back end of the secondary. Again, they got some experience. They got a lot of experience there in the back end of the secondary. Not to mention that, again, you got some players from those safeties for your 2020 recruiting class. Yes, it's tough losing Jacoby Stevens, but they're still very talented in the back end of their secondary that I think that they're going to be absolutely fine, if not better than what they were. Right? 2020 was a mess, but they're still extremely talented, and they're known for producing talent. Of course, Corey Raymond, he's known as as the best defensive backs coach and known for really producing the talent. So I do believe that they will get better in the back end in 2020. Special teams, LSU is pretty much always fine there in the special teams area. So I'm not really worried about that. So yeah, again, 20 starters. I forgot to even mention the defensive line with, I think they returned back. I think Jaquelin Roy stepped up huge. I think they got Neil Farrell, Ali Gay, who could have declared for the NFL draft and could have been that, could have probably been a 2nd or 3rd round pick just purely as an edge rusher. You return him back. BJ Ojulari stepped up huge as a pass rusher for the LSU Tigers. I can go on about the amount of names that could definitely play a huge impact for the 2021 season. But all those things that I just named, one thing that they have in common is that a lot of those guys are young players. But there's also a mixture of veteran players. A lot of those guys were young, but at the same time, they're veteran type players. They're freshman, sophomore, junior-like players that are all coming back for the LSU Tigers. So not just the 21-21 season, we could be talking about the 22 season and beyond of setting up depth and of really just building up depth for the future. Right? 2020 was a mess. You lost a bunch of players to opt-outs, guys like Jamar Chase as well. Jamar Chase, you lose him, the best receiver in the nation, in an opt-out. Terrence Marshall literally quit in the middle of the season. So, and again, you lose Eric Gilbert in the transfer portal and so on and so forth. Kerry Vincent. I mean, again, it was a mess. It was a mess. But now, if this season can continue to go on and there's no distractions as far as opt-outs and people entering the transfer portal, we could be looking at a huge bounce back year for the LSU Tigers to kind of redeem themselves and for them to potentially compete for not just an SEC West title, but who knows, maybe another national championship this year.